desert in the great American Southwest. I'm Art Bell.
Slamming into your radio like a supercharged nanoparticle of unobtainium. My name is George Knapp.
I'm Richard Serrett.
This is Connie Willis.
I'm George Norrie. Welcome to Coast AM. It's great to be here.
Welcome to Coast PM, the #1 unofficial Coast to Coast AM podcast. We are two brothers who analyze the world's largest overnight paranormal radio show. My name is Paul, here with my brother Chris.
Hey, Paul, it's Chris. And I got a real special treat for all of our coastronauts here. We're with the sublime scoundrel of the paranormal, the off-kilter observer of all things esoteric, pioneering founder of Binnall of America, news editor for Coast to Coast AM, the man behind Tim Time, the Tim Binnall for Tim Time Live. Let's go.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's really surreal. I think Chris was the one who reached out to me and included me into your show. Chris, you're the one on Twitter, right? Is that
that's Chris.
Yeah. So then I went in and listened to all the old shows, and I'm like, this is so fucking weird. Like, it was just so weird. So I'm happy to come on the show and talk about what it is I do, and answer any of your questions and all that fun stuff.
How was that, finding out that we've essentially created a Tim Binnall fan club over here? Because we read your stuff every episode.
It was weird. It was surreal. Yeah, it was surreal. It's interesting. A lot of people read the stuff, so it was you don't really get much feedback. So it was nice to be appreciated. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty cool. It was like, oh wow, these guys really take these stories. And so, it was just surreal, because sometimes you'll mention something that I wrote or a way I phrased something. I think Paul didn't believe that bilking was a word from one of the articles. It is a word. It is a word. So on the second episode, I got Paul. I know you've grown to love me now. But on the second episode, I think you called my stuff subpar.
Oh, I was hoping you didn't listen to that.
I listened to them all.
I do love your stuff. And when Chris reposted it, I didn't know I had said that, and I was like, God damn it! I was like, what if Tim listened?
Oh, I listened.
He listened.
I made sure I give you some shit when I
son of a bitch.
Came on the show. So no, it's all good. It's all good. Look, at some of them are subpar. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I roll them out all the time. So some of them are just kind of, you can only deal with they and you're dealt, right?
Right.
But I know you guys were just. I've heard all of them, so I've heard you guys become bigger fans over the last year or whatever. And like I said, it's really surreal because it's just weird. So, and a lot of fun. I really enjoyed listening to them.
Well, thanks a lot. That's pretty incredible to hear. Well, Tim, then what your first question is, right? Your first question is, how'd you get into this?
All right. Well, it's weird talking to you guys because you only know me from coast to coast, so it's kind of like
right.
Everywhere. Everybody in the paranormal knows me from Binnall of America, so it's like, oh wow. All right, I'll give you like the long version, I guess. So I got out of college in 2001, graduated from Syracuse, and my dad was like, all right, here's how much you owe, and here's the wall ads. So I ended up getting an overnight job at my old high school as a janitor. And obviously it was the overnight, so I had always been into the paranormal, and a friend of mine turned me on to Coast to Coast. So this was, I think I kind of came in at around late 2002. October 2002 is when I got back into the paranormal. So I've been doing the overnight for a while. 2002, George Norrie took over in January 2003. So I heard like sort of the end of the Art Bell years. I really kind of just didn't get into Coast to Coast till like about the beginning of 2003. So listened to the show for years and years and years while I was doing that job, and was like, well, I would like to, I have questions for like the guests and stuff, like many listeners do. And I'm like, well, I'm working and I can't really call and be on hold or whatever. And, it just seemed kind of like too big a ask at the time.
Right.
So I was like, well, what if I interview these people myself? So I launched my own show. This is before podcasting started. It was like right when podcasting started. So I launched Binnall of America, interviewed a lot of the people who've been on Coast to Coast. Did Binnall of America. I still do it sporadically, but essentially did it for like about 15 years. Somewhere about 2007, Coast to Coast needed someone to do some fill-in work on the website. They knew me. They brought me in to do the fill-in stuff. Then around November of 2015, through various talks with the show, we did this. We decided to start putting up news on the website in the daytime because they didn't have anything going up on the website in the daytime because it's an overnight show. So we're like, let's use this time. Let's sort of make use of this website and the time and everything, and sort of bring people news, paranormal news, during the daytime. And they brought me on as the news editor then. So it's been almost I think it's this, I guess at the end of November, I think I'll be starting like my 8th year or something like that. So
Wow,
it's been a long time.
Awesome. So what originally got you into the paranormal and the conspiracy world?
Well, I was always enjoyed it as a kid. Then I went off to college and kind of put it in the back burner. And then I got out of school, and as I said, I graduated in 2001. So like 9/11 happened, and that was all kind of like topsy-turvy and threw everything off. I was just kind of wayward for a while, and I even wrote like a bad movie about Bigfoot that I don't even know where like the script is now. But like this before, now there's like a million Bigfoot movies, but this is like back when it was just Harry and the Hendersons and like maybe one other movie. So I really was ahead of my time. It's not a movie.
You should have published it.
I know. If I could find a copy of the movie somewhere, I'll dig it out and maybe polish it up and see if I can get it going anywhere. But anyway, so then I found a book I was looking around, kind of wondering what, just kind of wayward. And I found a book by Jim Marrs, Rule by Secrecy, which is like all about secret societies and conspiracies. And I loved that and devoured that. And then his other book, Alien Agenda, was essentially like the UFO phenomenon version of that. So I just loved that, read that. And then it just kind of set me off on this path of looking into all this stuff. And I never really, I think because I was such a big Coast to Coast fan, they cover all the different topics. They're not like a UFO show or a Bigfoot show or, there's a show for just about every paranormal genre you can think of now.
Right.
But with Coast, you might tune in, you might get a UFO show, you might get a Bigfoot thing, you might get a ghost thing. And that kind of influenced, I think, my interest in the topics, where it was like, I want to know about all the different stuff, rather than just specialize and be like a UFO guy. Like my bread and butter is kind of UFOs. It's kind of like I know the most people in UFO world, and that's most of my friends are sort of tangentially involved with UFOs and that, and like Bigfoot. Those are like the two main worlds that I kind of like am a bit on the fringe of. But I'm not a UFO researcher. I'm not a ufologist. I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I'm not a ghost hunter. My whole shtick is that I'm just overlooking all this. I'm observing the whole thing. I'm trying to cover it like I'm covering the base. I live in Boston, like I'm covering the Red Sox. Like I'm just, like, kind of this is my beat, and I'm writing about the weird stuff. And I don't have a rooting interest really in it per se. I'm kind of I just call balls and strikes. That's kind of how
I think that's one of the things we love about what we call 10 time. Is that you do cover so much stuff, and not just so much stuff in the conspiracy and paranormal realm, but kind of like in the global weird realm.
Right.
And I know Paul had a question kind of on that topic.
Yeah. How do you find these stories? Because that was something Chris and I have talked about a lot on the show, I think. Because you cover everything from like ghosts in India to someone getting stabbed with a samurai sword in like Denmark playing Monopoly or whatever that one was. So
I told Chris to cover that one.
Where do you track these down?
Well, I have a list of like maybe 20 websites that are my basic base list that I kind of use. And then after that, I sort of just run through Google like nonstop all day, kind of. I don't necessarily have Google alerts. I just hand search and stuff, but I have like a huge list in my head of different words and topics and stuff like that I just sort of like keep, I'll write a story and then I'll like run through the list and be like, all right, let's see if anything came up, since this morning about Dyatlov Pass or, Abominable Snowman or Yowie or Thylacine or Amelia Earhart. And it's like, you just kind of have to hit all those words all the time because you never know like what's going to happen. Something weird might happen with Amelia Earhart over another part of the world where they think, there's places where they think she crashed and weird stuff happens there, bureaucratic weird, like they had a mural of her and the town hated it. And it was like, all right, that's a story. That's a good story. That's that's in the realm. But I kind of have a rule of thumb that like in order to really cover it, it has to be weird or wondrous. Those are kind of the two things, so it's kind of like it's either got to be really weird or like really like, wow, that's wild kind of. And I mean, I really do enjoy like the samurai sword one you mentioned. I really do enjoy like I would almost call them like wacky true crime almost.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, like so if it's like a wacky, all those stories almost always end with like someone in trouble in some way. So it's like wacky true crime or kind of right on the edge of wacky true crime. And I find for those stories specifically, I find Reddit's a really good source for that kind of stuff. I feel like that stuff gets picked up a lot on Reddit, so I'll see a lot of that stuff there. But
like the guy who got shot over a hot pocket. I think that's a great example of that. You know, just like ridiculous stories that are just fun for us to read.
Yeah, no, they're fun for me to write. I mean, I'm happy to cover like the latest UFO video or whatever, but there's a sameness to them where it's like, okay, then you got a guy who got stabbed with a samurai sword because they were playing Monopoly out on the sidewalk in a city at 5 a.m. It's like, that's crazier than any UFO story I could even find. Like, that's one of the weirdest stories I've heard in a long, long time. So it's like, I enjoy covering those quite a bit.
There's almost something that you can't make up about them, right? They're too crazy to be the figment of somebody's imagination. I think one of my favorites that we covered of yours was I believe, young Indian boy who was haunting the older lady for like months.
Right. Yeah.
And that, like, again, like I did not have that kind of mind as an adolescent boy where I would haunt an older lady for months.
Well, I think India is a fantastic country because it's so big. Right. It's really, people don't really grasp how big it is. And I don't know really the politics of India, but I think that it's certainly more democratic than like Russia or China. Right. So people can get mixed up in weird stuff, and there's a little more independent media that it gets out there. So there's always a lot of weird stuff comes out of there. Almost probably like every other week or something, I've got a strange story out of there because they're very big into like ghosts and sort of the paranormal. And I mean, like I said, it's so huge. There's so many people. It's not like America. There's always going to be, like last week I did a story about a girl who was cutting off the power to her village so she could meet with her boyfriend. That same thing happened last year, but it was a guy who did it. But it was like that. It's like America. There's so many people. There's people going to be doing weird stuff. Like the per capita for weirdness that's I think why you have so many stories from India. It's not like Spain or France where it's like this much smaller population, less opportunity for weird things to happen. Over in India, there's so many people that there's more opportunities for weird stuff to happen, and it does. But to sort of go also to your point about finding the stuff, a lot of times, like if you do like almost a vague search, you almost kind of can find something better if you know how to look. And it's like if you look for like creature, but you keep going and deeper into what's coming up.
Yes.
Like on the 7th page, you'll find like dozen sheep dead by unknown creature, and it's like, bam, there you go. That's the
one. That's the one.
Yeah.
Well,
that's awesome.
And along the lines of those articles too, one of the things that we've talked about on the podcast is Knapp's News, where George Knapp shares his favorite news articles. And I don't know if you have any insight into this. Is there a cadence to him sending those in? Because I feel like it is kind of random. I wasn't sure if it was just like when he was in the mood to share them or what, how those functioned.
It's essentially if he's hosting that night, then he shares with the host. He sends them like interesting news to put in the article, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty standard, I guess.
Oh, okay. Nothing crazy then.
No. Like if he's he's working on Sunday night, then he'll
just post it.
Yeah.
That makes so much more sense.
And the stories too, he'll be like, here's 5 or 6 stories for Knapp's News that have been. So yeah,
we had all kinds of insane conspiracy theories about what the cadence of Knapp's News was.
I didn't look at the
nights
timing.
he was hosting.
It makes so much more sense.
That's it. Yeah, it's just when he hosts, he shares some interesting stories that he found with the audience. So and sometimes he'll have stuff that I did or I'm gonna do, or there's a little bit of crossover there. But yeah, no, I used to be the fill-in guy, so I know that's how they're done. So there's no like secret sauce or anything. Why, you weren't sure? You didn't put it together that they only showed up on the nights that he was hosting?
I didn't put it together because I listened so like in such weird patterns for our show that I didn't connect that it was those same nights.
Yeah.
Because I don't listen live because I can't stay up that late. So.
In the morning, it's tough.
Yeah.
So you mentioned being in the UFO UAP realm somewhat.
Yeah.
What has your take been about the David Grush UFO testimonies and stuff like that? What are the people that you're talking about? Because I think Paul and I, right, we're not really in the realm of the conspiracy and paranormal world, in that we're not going to like conferences and
we're not interviewing people.
We don't really have interviews. We haven't really put a lot of material out other than our, and I don't even know what to call it, our commentary on Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah.
And like, that's really the only way we penetrate the world is that the thing we're looking at is Coast to Coast AM. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And so for the most part, we only really take on what the media, what the kind of maybe mainstream media tells us about what's going on with the UFO, UAP stuff. And then also I'm pretty big into Reddit as well. So, I'm on UFO, aliens, high strangeness, conspiracy, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I like seeing what those people are seeing. But again, that's Joe Blow. Anybody can type something, right? And so what are you hearing from a lot of the people that you're talking to about what the heck is going on right now?
Well, I talk to a lot of old timers, so I'm a little bit jaded about what's happening. Most of my friends, I've been in this for like 20 years now, so most of my friends have been in this for almost as long, if not longer, and so we've kind of all seen it before. And there's a certain like group of fans, if you will, UFO fans. They're more like UAP aficionados that came in after that New York Times article. You can kind of tell there's like a delineation between people who read that article and kind of got on board the coverage, and they're really into it now. And they're more like UAP buffs essentially rather than a UFO buff. And they're more interested in the government disclosure aspect of it. Personally, I'm more into the high strangeness of UFOs and sort of like the weird stuff and the weird occupant type stories or anything really bizarre related to UFOs. I don't really find the machinations of the government stuff to be too thrilling. I will say I thought last week was a lot of fun, the hearing on UFOs. I don't know what to make of the whistleblower. I'm very jaded, which I think in a sense kind of helps my coverage with Coast to Coast, because I'm not like, like I said, I just call balls and strikes. I'm not cheering from the press box. It would be cool if disclosure happened, but I don't want to lead people on and be like, this is going to be it, everybody. Because it's like, no, let's not. That's why, like, if you read a lot of my articles, I'm sure you guys have, it's like every article I do, or it's a Bigfoot, a UFO, a ghost, like, it's like, here's the thing, here's what's in the video, here's what it could be. And I always include, like, it could be a trick of light and shadow, it could be a drone, it could be a bird, it could be a balloon, it could be a bear if it's a Bigfoot, it could be just pareidolia if it's a ghost or whatever. So it's like, I never just tell people, like, this is ghost pictured in whatever, you know. I mean, you can say that with a UFO because a UFO is an unidentified flying object, but it's like, I'm never like, somebody filmed Bigfoot in Oklahoma, because it's like, unless they shot it and have the Bigfoot, you don't know if it's a Bigfoot. So don't tell people that it's a Bigfoot. That's kind of my rule of thumb, I guess you could say, my standard. So, like, I don't want to jazz people up about the potential for UFO disclosure. I'm kind of just following along like everybody else. I mean, it's a soap opera in a way. It's very interesting to me. I thought last week was really fun. So far, I mean, I was a little frustrated because the whistleblower, Grush, was like, he couldn't answer any questions, really. He kept saying, I'll tell you in this classified setting. So it's like, all right, well, I'm kind of as wondrous as a lot of you guys are, and it's like, well, did they go and meet in the skiff, or what is the skiff? Did he tell them what was going on? What's going to happen next? You know, I think right now it's just all this kind of fallout from it, and there's not really any developments. It's hard to really follow sort of UFO community because there's a lot of speculation and rumor, and it's like, I don't really report on that stuff. So it's kind of like, well, if it's coming out of Congress or something like that, then we'll talk about it. But I'm not like, oh, here's the latest scuttlebutt on you know what might come next, because there's a lot of stuff never like pans out or anything.
And is that intentional on your part that you don't kind of follow the, I don't know, the like everyday machinations? Like if there's like a big thing we kind of noticed, you know, I think when the first Grush whistleblower,
the News Nation article,
when that came out, I think you did an article about it.
Yeah,
but like you said, you were very, I don't want to say you weren't throwing cold water on it, but you were not as sensationalist as a lot of other people.
Chris, I just call balls and strikes. Just call balls and strikes. I can't.
Well, and that was something I was gonna.
that's my policy. I'm saying, you know, it may not. And I feel bad. I do think that sometimes it's stressful in a way, because it's like, I don't think I think UFO people probably don't like necessarily my coverage of it, but it's like, look, dude, I'm not writing for the UFO people. I'm writing for everybody else. So I don't want them to be misled and think that something's happening. You know, I don't want to put too much weight in things that unless we know for sure.
Well, and I think that's something that Paul and I have really grown to appreciate about your coverage over the last year that we've been looking at your articles, is that you are so even-handed with the material. And I kind of wanted to know, where did that come from? Because that is actually, as Paul and I have seen over this year of case studies, looking at Art Bell, looking at George Norrie, looking at George Knapp, you know, all the other Ian Punnett, looking at everyone. A lot of times in the conspiracy and paranormal realm, people are not willing to be that even-handed.
Right.
And so where did that come from for you?
I guess just wanting to get it right.
Right.
I just don't want to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's like I said, it's balls and strikes. It's just the facts. It's kind of like, I don't want to, you know, very early on, I kind of was like really gung-ho about a UFO story that came out of Chile, and it got like debunked like right away. And I was like, all right, you know, I need to be even more kind of like, let's just play it as it goes. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like that was probably an early instance where it was just like, all right, this is, you know, because then like I had to do a subsequent article that was like, all right, turns out this wasn't as fantastic as it appeared at first. And then it was like, you know what? Let's just call it down the middle and kind of, you know, and I mean, I generally was like that anyway, but I was excited because I thought it was a really good case. And it was like, oh shit, it's not a really good case. So but I always sort of had that attitude. It's like, I don't want to look like an idiot and go, this guy filmed a Bigfoot in Oklahoma or whatever. And then it's like, dude, that's not a Bigfoot, that's a bear or whatever, or we got hoaxed or something like that. You know, it's like hoaxes, that's another sort of thing you got to kind of always be on guard for. So, you know, it's just like better safe than sorry. I don't want to look dumb. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. That's kind of, I mean, like there was a story recently. I can give you a really good example of like the challenge and sort of my process is sort of last week. There was a drone video of a Bigfoot that got really popular and it was like really great footage. And a lot of the places covered it because they call it like the best Bigfoot footage ever, right? In quotes, because the person who presented it said that. So like in the process of untangling this story, I figured out that it was posted to TikTok by a paranormal channel, and the young woman who produced it, she was the one who was like, this might not necessarily be real, but I think this is the best Bigfoot footage ever made. So it was like they all took the quote, put it in their headline, and then they were off to the races. So I'm like, well, where did she find this video? Because I traffic in a lot of crazy videos. So I've gotten really good at sort of like, I want to find the original. That's kind of my part of the challenge of the job.
Yeah. Who did the first upload?
Yeah. So where did this come from? So I managed to track down the original source, and it was this guy who posted it. He's a carpenter. He posts mostly carpentry videos, random Bigfoot one that he made, random drone one. And the title was like Sasquatch, bear, then not real. And it was like, okay, I don't know. The Wayback Machine couldn't, this is like how seriously I take this fucking job, guys. So in case you think that I'm just sitting there going, this is like an hours long process. So it's like, okay, well, did this always say not real? So like the Wayback Machine couldn't show me like when the guy first posted it 7 months ago, what the title was, but at some point he put not real. So it was like, well, okay, I have to tell the whole story here. I have to tell the story of how this was filmed 7 months ago. It was picked up on TikTok. The person said it was fantastic, but if you go back and find the original video, the guy says not real. So, you know, more likely than not, it is not real. Because the guy who made it said it's not real. I mean, how much more? I don't know what else, you know, unless he's part of the cover-up, the Bigfoot cover-up. You kind of have to just go with the truth and say this, you know, if you find where the guy put the video up originally, he said it's not real, so it's not real. Sorry to burst your bubble, you know. I hate to be the bearer of bad news sometimes, but you have to do that if you find a story that you realize then is not all it's chalked up to be, you know. I find that happens a lot with like the British tabloids. They'll run a story,
right?
And I'll be like, and again, you ask like where I find these sort of far-flung stories. Like, God bless them, those British tabloids do find a lot of stuff.
They love the wild and crazy stuff.
Yeah, and they must. I don't know how. I'd love to know how they do it because I would like to do it, but like somehow they have like some method of like getting these stories from really far-flung places before I can get my hands on them, where it's like, that's where you'll see like just a crazy happenstance happening in some village somewhere or in a town somewhere or far-flung thing in Russia or whatever. Like somehow they get these stories very often before I do, but then I'll grab like, I'll try to take the witness's name, plug it into Google, go back and back until I find the original story from the local newspaper where it was, or website or whatever, where the story first broke. And sometimes there you find out that it's like, oh, it turned out that then like a week later they caught a crocodile or whatever. That was what was behind the mystery killings or something like that. You'll find a little bit of detail. You'll find some little bit of extra where it kind of like is like, oh, wait a minute, there's not this story, you know. So I try to just put all the information I can in there. But always try to find the original source of the stuff, because that to me is like, then you know for sure you're getting the straight dope pretty much.
Right. Well, and that's something that Paul and I talk about a lot on the podcast is we have to be much more intelligent consumers of information. Like the first take is so rarely the right take these days.
Yeah.
We never get the full picture in the immediacy of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so do you think that's something that the conspiracy and paranormal realm are the whole cohort of people understanding that lesson? Do you feel like, is that something, or do you still find people are still taking those first takes as like gospel truths?
Oh, I think it's just a problem like with the internet in general. Like people
Right.
read the headline, and if it's like on a site like Facebook or Twitter, sometimes they'll, you know, the first sentence might get also included, and that'll be about as much as they read sometimes.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's tough to rely on people to read the whole article or whatever. So it's an overarching problem. Now, I hear you talk a lot about conspiracy. I don't necessarily cover conspiracy much at all, really, at the Coast side, because to me, there's sort of been this reality shift in the way we all share this country, maybe the world, but the country certainly, where it's like everybody's a conspiracy theorist now. There's no
100%.
Because you're asking me about the conspiracy community, and it's like, well, what do you mean? Like everyone online, like everybody, there's a very unshared reality between the two sides, the two political camps, really.
That is true.
And
that is very true.
And so it's like, it's not like back in the old days when like conspiracy theories
was just JFK and the moon landing, right?
Right, exactly. 9/11.
Yeah.
Now it's like these overarching like world building exercises, and it's you can't. That's kind of a rabbit hole I'm not really interested in going down with what we do, because it's too divisive. It's too weird, not in a good way. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of like dark elements to this stuff. That's like, I want to have fun. That's kind of my thing. I just want this to be fun, and it's like that's really not fun, because there's a lot of anger in there in those worlds, like QAnon type stuff. You know,
right?
Like, I don't do QAnon, but I mean, I'll do flat Earth. Like, I love the flat Earth, so like, or moon hoax, or any of the classic conspiracy theories.
Right.
But contemporary conspiracy theories now is like, there's just a million of them, and they're all like just supercharged political conspiracies. It's like, oh god, you know, what
do you think that was? What happened?
All that?
What happened that because you're totally right. There's something, you know, we've gone through a little bit for our Patreon, Behold a Pale Horse.
Right.
And there is something that is so quaint about going through Bill Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse. It's almost cute now. We were like going through some of the chapters, and we were like, dude, it's adorable.
Yeah.
These, you know, the idea that the mailman is going to be the one that takes you to the mail prison. Like that's a hilarious and adorable idea.
Mm-hmm.
That is, like you were saying, that's not the case. There's a darkness
to
the right and the left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I just think people got really super divided. They've just been super divided, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Very tribal. You know, and then that Pizzagate stuff and the QAnon stuff really added in a really dark element to this stuff that's like, oh geez. You know, and the people who believe that stuff, I don't, they fervently get into that, and they're like super aggressive. I think that turns a lot of people off. You know, it's like, I don't people are a little too intense. And, you know, then the whole thing with the election now, then it's like, well, one side thinks that the election was rigged, the other side's like, no, it was on the level. And it's like, this is such a schism. I don't know how we can ever bring each other back together again. So I don't know, but it's like it just keeps getting worse. And I think the election really, and God knows what's going to happen with this next election. It's like I don't know how we can, if anything, it's like I'm pessimistic about UFO disclosure happening, but part of me is like, well, maybe that's the only thing that could bring us together as a people if there were aliens or something. Like otherwise, we're headed. It feels like we're headed for a civil war or something.
Yeah, and I mean that's a big part on the podcast too that I've mentioned a couple times, but. When I'm the one that like listens and I choose the episodes a lot of times and stuff, and I actively avoid any like political conversations because I just don't want to do it. Because like you, like I just want to have fun. I want to enjoy the conversation. I don't want to be divisive. And something that I've noticed too is that we have conservative and liberal listeners, and that's kind of the way I want to do it. Is like, let's just talk about aliens, dude. And I don't care what your politics are. Like, let's talk about aliens. Let's talk about ghosts. And with the congressional hearing, one of the things that I loved seeing that actually made me kind of happy was Republican and Democrat representatives both not arguing. Everyone's in on this. Everyone just wanted to talk about UAPs. And I think you're right. Like maybe that's the thing that we need is for everyone just to talk about UFOs a bit more.
That was refreshing. It was very refreshing, so it's good.
Well, Ozymandias came up with it in The Watchmen. It was an alien invasion that united the Earth.
Yeah, I heard about that today. Actually, I read something about that on Twitter. Someone mentioned that. So
yeah. So
that's kind of I still like the wackier conspiracy theories, but plus a lot of these contemporary conspiracies, they're like they're literally contemporaneous.
Yeah,
right.
Like I can't, to me, a conspiracy theory is better when you have the perspective to look at the theory. It's not like, oh, this is all part of an unfolding conspiracy that's happening right now. It's like relax, chill out. We'll let's just see how it plays out.
Well, and you mentioned Flat Earth, which is one of my favorite episodes that we've done. That one was just a ton of fun for me personally, along with the Hollow Earth, which I had a lot of fun with. What are some of your other favorite wacky conspiracies that you get into?
Personally, well, I have a lot of interaction with the flat earthers. I'm sort of I'm a friend of the flat earthers, so they're interesting people. I went to anyone who's Binnall fans will know all this, but you guys don't. Your audience doesn't. So, like 2019, I had covered the Flat Earth conference in 2017 and then 2018. So another one was coming up in 2019. And I was like, I got vacation time to kill, and I know everybody in UFO world and Bigfoot world and most of the ghost people, and I know all the players, and I know all the different paranormal stories, like backwards and forwards. And I'm like, I kind of just needed something new. And I'm like, well, who are these flat Earth people? Like, how are they even mixed up with this? How big could this really be? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go find out. I'm going to go and go to the Flat Earth conference and spend the whole weekend with them, not just like pop in. So I kind of like embedded myself with the Flat Earthers for the weekend. And it was an interesting experience. They're interesting characters. They're very normal looking people. They're very nice people. We had an understanding that I wasn't going to try and convert them, and they, in turn, I would appreciate if they didn't try to convert me. I'm not a flat earther by any means. Right. And it's like, I didn't want to waste my time that over the weekend, like, having somebody be like, well, how do you explain this? Or how do you explain that? It's like, dude, don't.
Yeah. That, because I mean, once you go down that rabbit hole, then that's what the whole experience becomes, right? And I totally agree with you. What the real juice comes from is you being like, just explain the whole world to me.
Right. It was like, how did you get mixed up in this? So a lot of them, like most of them got turned on by YouTube videos. They were kind of already into conspiracy theories, and this just clicked with them. A lot of them are really religious, and they cite it coming from the Bible. They believe that there's parts of the Bible that reference that reveal that the earth is flat. And they're like really earnest religious people. So it's like, you can't, I mean, they're wrong, but it's like, you feel bad for them almost, where it's like, I like to say they're just misguided people. because they were like really sweet and they really appreciated that I just listened to them. And it was just very sort of strange to sort of like be among people that have this worldview that is wrong, but they're like good people. So it's like, geez, it was a really interesting experience. And then I noticed that because I was like, they seem kind of combative online and everything, and they just seem kind of odd. But then I would post pictures from the Flat Earth conference on my social media while I was there, without any sort of like pro or just same as I always do, just calling balls and strikes. Like, hey, I'm on the ground here in Dallas for the Flat Earth conference. More stuff to follow. Here's some of the stuff I've seen, and like people would like just strangers. I don't know how they must have it set up to search for Flat Earth. Because I didn't even use hashtags. They would like bombard. I got like bombarded with hate from people who were just like, you're this and that and all these expletives and you're wrong and all this, and it's just like, dude, I'm just like here to see the show. I'm not a flat earther. But it's like, okay, and I can kind of see why these people are like walk around like they're kind of wounded, because they get attacked all the time because they're into the flat earth. Like, it gets people really angry.
Right.
People who don't believe although the vast majority can handle it. There's a weird, if like 5% of the population is flat earth, there's another 5% that like is really angry about that, and the other 90% are fine. We're like,
yes,
dude, don't believe the earth's flat. Don't believe the earth's flat. I don't really care. Like, my mind's made up. This is a debate that has nothing, This is like, are you arguing over whether germs exist or whether Australia is real or something like that? It's like it's case closed, right? So, but yeah, they're odd. The people who get so mad are almost as odd as the flat earthers. So, but I did find I have a tenuous relationship now with the people of flat earth. I like to think that I'm still a friend of the flat earth, but I've talked a lot about their community in the years since. So I think that some of them probably are like, oh, this guy's an interloper, which I always was. So it's not a big secret. But I found that they got really, to go back into conspiracy a little, like when the pandemic happened, because this was November 2019, the pandemic then came up about 6 months later. They got mixed up in, a lot of them were super anti-pandemic. Like, they didn't believe in it. They were plandemic people. So they just went from flat earth to plandemic seamlessly.
Right.
Probably because, like, if you're stuck inside your house, what difference does it make if the earth is flat or round, right? It's like,
yeah.
What else do we have on the dial?
Right.
So they got into plandemic and like, sadly, yeah, I think it's three pretty prominent flat earth people. I don't know if they all died of COVID. At least 2 died of COVID, but they were like super, like, not going to take the vaccine and yeah. So 3 high profile people died like in the last couple of years, either from the thing or thought to be from the virus or something like that. So it was like very, just kind of disappointing, because like I remember, like it might have even been 2020. They were planning another outing or whatever, and they're like, we're gonna do it in this place in South Carolina because it's the only. Now you remember, this is like the summer of 2020. They're like, it's the only place in the country that would let us get together without masks. And this was like the selling point of the event. They were like, we're all gonna meet there, and nobody has to wear a mask. The staff won't be wearing a mask. The hotel management won't. No, there's not even mask allowed in the building. And it was like, wow, okay, well, that's a bold move, Cotton. That's a bold move. You're gonna go for it, do it. But I'm not coming to South Carolina for that, because it sounds like a petri dish. As far as I know, nobody really got sick coming out of that, but I have no idea. I'm not connected to the community. So plenty of people could have, but the whole thing was like, that's such a weird selling point. That's a weird selling point. So yeah, I've delved a lot into the flat earth people. I think the whole thing's kind of died out now.
Right. Well, and kind of like we were saying before, flat earth almost is one of those quaint conspiracies at this point.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it as a conspiracy theory because it's so weird and unfathomable.
and you know, the ice sheet around the whole earth, and then, you know, if you kept on going down the ice sheet, eventually you get to another, you know, flat earth.
Yeah, it's a very elaborate,
Mhm.
like, just a really elaborate kind of like, okay, this is a house of cards of like beliefs and stuff. So it's, you know, it's fun though. It's fun.
Yeah.
So weird where it's like, wow, okay, yeah, like you're saying, it's like, so there's an ice sheet around and we don't, and they're covering that up somehow.
Yeah.
To me, that's the whole thing too, where it's like, so no one, like, everybody agreed that we're just going to keep the secret of the flat earth. Like like, I can kind of buy the aliens thing because I'm guessing that almost no other, like, maybe like 3 or 4 countries kind of know more about what's going on. You know, I don't think like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't want to pick on any random countries. You know, Portugal's a good example, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's
You
an all
know,
right
or
one to pick
Sweden or something like that. I don't think they are privy to, you know, no one's talking about them cutting a secret deal with aliens and stuff like that,
on.
or
Right.
covering down craft, or what you hear ascribed to like Russia or United States or China, or like England.
I can see the British getting their grubby hands into some UFO stuff.
Absolutely. So yeah, but like I'd say the vast majority of like world powers have they're not covering up aliens. They have no idea if they're aliens or not. But like the Earth being flat, I think it's kind of like, if you you know, it's also one of those theories. It's like, dude, you should be able to prove this by now. There's no it's a very weird conspiracy theory where it's like, I think it's been around since the 1800s, believe it or not, and it goes like in these waves of interest where it's like people start getting interested in it, percolates a little bit, and then like the media, whatever it is, newspapers back in the day, radio, television, internet now, they're like, people are talking about the flat earth. There's people who believe in that the earth is flat. Can you believe that? And then that like amplifies it, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it kind of like crests by the time everyone's just like, they essentially, the media, the scientists are like, this is why the earth's not flat, and like everybody kind of just looks into it and goes, oh, okay, that explains it. You know, and only a handful of people like still hang on to the wave. But that's kind of how it's worked every time around that the flat earth theories become popular. And I think, like I said, I think we've hit the crest of that. A lot of them moved on to pandemic. They got mixed up in this Q stuff and got they're into now.
Well, and it's not dark enough, right? I feel like so much conspiracy now is like pedophilia and blood sacrifice and demon worship, and it's like one of the things I always talk about with Paul is just like, I don't need any of that for my conspiracy.
Right. I don't find any of that entertaining at all. It's dark, it's unsettling. I'm
not a big true crime fan, so I don't really want to think about a lot of people getting murdered and children getting murdered. You know what I mean? That's not a fun thing for me.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I don't necessarily believe it. There's delineation of like these things, something's happened, and there's a worldwide network of, and it's like, all right, like, let's not. This is you're kind of going overboard here, guys. Like, you're kind of going way. You're amplifying, extrapolating,
right?
You know,
and they do it disservice. There is something. There was something like Jeffrey Epstein, right?
Yes,
there was something bad here, and because people added all the other crap about it,
right,
we're not ever going to be able to figure out now what exactly actually happened and how many other people have similar operations like this man did, because let's not beat around the bush, he wasn't the only one.
Yeah, that whole story is really weird because there's a lot of highly influential people of all stripes who were like mixed up with that guy, and the fact that like no one really, like, people talk about it, but it's like nothing ever. We don't really ever we don't know the whole story, or like how all these people were mixed up. Like no one investigated this, or like So yeah, that whole thing is very strange and super odd, and like it seems very clearly some kind of cover up at work of like, look, we're not going to ask any more questions about this black book of like all these different people,
Right.
who ran in the same company as this guy. Yeah, so I think you say you're on Reddit a lot. I'm on Reddit quite a bit too. I like Let's Not Meet and like Creepy Encounters, where these people share these stories about creepy encounters and interactions with people. They're both really cool subreddits. But the joke now on like one of them, Creepy Encounters, is like every third one is from someone who's like, I think I was almost trafficked. I think I was almost a victim of human trafficking. And it's like, no, you weren't. Like, that's not how human trafficking works, as far as I understand it. It's like people who are human trafficked, like, know their trafficker. They're people who are like taken in and then exploited. They're not like Paul leaving Walmart and like someone in a van grabs him and pulls him in. And they're like, now you're a sex worker, Paul. It's like, what? That's not like people would look for you. Like, it's not.
Right.
It's not the way a lot of people think. Where it's like, look, I think he was going to human traffic me. It's like,
right.
What do you think? No one would like try and find you? Or like, what do you think would happen? It's like runaways and people, unfortunate people who that happens to. I'm just grabbing a soda here out of my fridge.
You got it.
Yeah, Chris.
We have editing capabilities, so you're all good.
Right, no worries.
Not good capabilities, but we can a little bit.
We can.
You can leave that. It's not like it's some like dark secret.
I try to edit.
We've never claimed to be good at this job, but we do it.
Really, at some point, it's really more volunteering.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that's one of the hard lessons of podcasting. At first, you're like, wow, people want to listen to this. This is so cool. And then after like a few weeks, you're like, oh, Jesus, people want to listen to this. And it's just kind of like, oh, no, you felt like an obligation once you start building an audience. It's like, oh, boy, now I'm in, now I'm really in the deep end.
The first couple episodes we did, we were just firing completely from the hip. I was like, no one's going to listen to this. And then now we skipped a week and then we got a bunch of emails about it. And I was like, damn, all right. I guess someone actually is listening.
Yeah.
So, speaking of which, one of the questions I had for you, Tim, do you have any favorite Coast episodes, either from like the Art days or the Nori days that, we should be covering?
Or any of the side hosts.
Or the side hosts.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. That's hard. I've heard like so many shows over the years. It's like if I have a favorite baseball game, I watch Red Sox all the time. So I can't think of any off the top of my head. There was a really fantastic one I remember. I think it was like Richard C. Hoagland and Art Bell, and they did like 4 hours on Martian anomalies and stuff, like in December. It was like a December show, like in 2005 or something like that.
I think I know that one. Yeah, I think I have that.
It was a really great one.
I was going to say, that sounds great, and we need to do it.
Yeah, you may already have. It's a pretty, the old John Lear episode where he goes over the secret like doctrine, his letter that like details what the aliens are really up to. That's a classic one if you haven't done that one.
I haven't done that.
We haven't done John Lear yet. We need to do that. We did Hoagland's moon bases, but we haven't done Hoagland.
Yeah, we did the moon bases.
Yeah,
that was a fun one.
The John Lear is a good one. Any of the classic sort of guests are fun to go back and listen to. So yeah.
What, you got anything else, Paul?
No, I'm good, man.
All right.
Tim has been very gracious with his time, so we really appreciate it. Chris, you got anything else?
So one of our favorite episodes, of course, was the Art Bell call-in show when he does the Area 51 caller. Did you hear about that at the time?
No. I came in right about as Art was sort of stepping out of the host role, so I didn't really it was sort of legend for a long time. It was part of the lore of the show. It still is. So I didn't hear it as it happened or anything like that. So, and I don't know what to make of it. So it's Yeah, it's probably shenanigans just because to me, it's like I'm a cynic. So, I'm just like, yeah, that guy wasn't really flying in Area 51. So, but who knows? We don't know. We don't know as far as I know.
Yeah.
But it was it was a classic moment. That's for sure.
There are just so many things in the Coast to Coast AM realm that it's hard for anybody to collect it all. It really is. I mean, there's so many guests with so much information, and you have to be discerning enough to pick through it and find what works for you, right? And so do you have any like kind of parting thoughts for our listeners on what are some of the like discerning elements for Tim Binnall when he's looking for something that you feel is true? What do you look for? What are maybe some of the rhythms and rhymes of truth for you?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, I'd say just sort of like be aware of the sort of bias you might have that something's too good to be true. So it's like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And be cognizant of other explanations. Don't jump to conclusions. So it's just kind of start from a question, an open-ended question, and then see if you can see what truth seems to make the most sense, but be open to all the different possibilities. I really sort of asked me about like the UFO community. Like, there's a lot of people in the UFO community that they say they know that that it's aliens. And it's like, we don't know that it's aliens, dude. Like, so you got to come at it from what we actually know. And I'm sure there are people out there maybe who are listening who are like, no, I know it's aliens because I had an experience. Like, you may know it is, but I'm trying to work within the shared collective reality of everyone else. And so we don't know that it's aliens. So try to start from like the question that we really don't know the answer to these mysteries at all, and sort of work from there. That's sort of the base of operations, if you will.
Awesome. That was so awesome. Thank you so much, Tim, for joining us for Tim Time Live. That was awesome. Do you want to plug anything for our listeners to check out?
Yeah, well, obviously the Coast to Coast AM website, coastam.com. You can just put in Coast to Coast AM, on the Google, and you'll be able to find it. And then the articles are pretty much in the carousel, or you go to the news thing at the top, you'll see that. If you want to listen to my podcast, we haven't done an episode in like months, but we've been really sporadic the last few years, but I'm close to bringing it back. And you can find that at binnallofamerica.com, BINNALL of America.com. And if you're in the Nashville area, I'll be in Nashville the second week in November for the Strange Realities Conference. And you can find out more on that at strangerealities.com, I think, or just Google Strange Realities Conference.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to interrupt you and ruin the end like that. So that's how I do it.
No, you're all good. That was perfect. That was perfect.
It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, man. We really appreciate you coming on.
All right, Coasternauts, get out there, support Mr. Tim Binnall, and that's another episode of Coast to Coast PM, where it's all conspiracy all the time. Later.